Hello, this is BiomedRx Radio, a weekly holistic healthcare program that comes on every Sunday here at AM 590 and AM590theanswer.com. My name is Devin Lockett. I am your host, and I am here with my co-host, my daughter, Katie.
Hello.
And we have a special guest today, Mr. Kurt Othmer. He's from the EEG Institute in Woodland Hills, California. The EEG Institute is an institute of neurofeedback, or what is called EEG Biofeedback. Hi, Kurt. How are you?
Hey, guys. Hey, Devin.
All right. Welcome. It's good to hear from you. Actually, I studied with the EEG Institute, and this is how we came to perform neurofeedback services at the BiomedRx Health Center. And I wanted to know if you could give us a little bit of background about yourself and, of course, your parents, Mr. Siegfried and Sue Othmer, and how you guys got started in the field of neuroscience.
Well, we got into this because of my brother and his epilepsy. So basically, we have been in this since I was 9 years old, and my brother is about 7 years older than me and had a lot going on: autism, seizures, Tourette's. He had a lot of diagnoses put on him. And my parents are really serious scientists. They came at this. My dad's PhD in physics from Cornell. My mom's undergraduate work was in physics at Cornell, and then went on to study neurophysiology at Cornell. And so their background, and her sister went on to be a professor in neurophysiology at Brown and did her research at Harvard. And so they're these really serious scientists. And so when my brother had problems, they really set about finding solutions, and they tried a lot of things. It wasn't really until high school that they found neurofeedback for him, and that was really transformative. And my dad tells that whole story. It's a pretty complicated story in the end, but my dad tells that whole story in the book Brian's Legacy, and it's a cool story, and it's what put us on the road back in 1985 to doing this and being where we are today. So, the main thing is our hearts are in this. We're in this to try to help people, and that's reflected in the work that's named after my brother, the Brian Othmer Foundation, that's working in homeless shelters and trying to make a difference in people's lives. And my parents are known internationally for the training course. We have 48 instructors in 14 countries teaching their work, and people travel from around the globe to work with my parents and hear their classes. And you're one of the people who attended the class, and
Yes.
And so I appreciate you bringing me on the air to hear a little bit about my perspective on things. You got to hear from my dad a few weeks ago, right?
Yes. Your father was on an earlier episode, and we got covered a lot of ground and got a lot of really interesting information out to the public. I think that neuroscience is big. It's getting bigger, and neurofeedback is something that's a lot more effective at helping with neurological conditions and improving the quality of life than a lot of people realize.
Yeah, this is the moment. I mean, neuroscience right now, we're starting to hear so much, and I think the exposure that we get is through Facebook and through social media and through, the cute little YouTube videos, and people like to draw a great deal out of these little discoveries. But it's really the last 10 or 15 years that our understanding of the brain, we can really start to understand the brain and see how it works without, it's nothing grisly, right? I mean, it wasn't that long ago that the understanding of the brain was sort of CAT scans where they kind of, it's an X-ray basically. It's like, oh, it's broken,
Yes.
But really to see brain function, we're
Yes.
at this moment in time when all of a sudden you have tools like fMRI, which is functional magnetic resonance imaging. And this is a tool that allows us to start to see how the brain is responding. And nobody gets hurt. I mean, it's loud, but it's not, you don't have to cut somebody open like they did thousands of years ago. It's just, they can just see how the brain is working, and now they can ask you questions and see how your brain responds to the questions and how your brain is working, what lights up when you're thinking about different kinds of things. And I think, my particular beef is that we draw a lot of grand conclusions. It's like, hey, we hold up an iPhone. We're like, do you like your iPhone? And this little center lights up in the brain, and we're like, oh my gosh, we have an iPhone center in the brain. And it's like,
Wow.
maybe not. maybe that's just you thinking about a phone, and it's not actually an iPhone center in the brain. But things we do really have that light up when you see faces, and it's amazing to start to see these technical aspects of how the brain is functioning, and then how we can help. And that gets us into neurofeedback and how we can actually make a difference. What got us into this is the work of Dr. Barry Sturman, which was 15 years before we got into the field with my brother.
Barry Sturman?
Yeah, Dr. Barry Sturman. And he was UCLA, and he was working with cats. And he was testing, so there's another kind of brain measure that's going on right now, which is EEG, which is what we're talking about. And EEG is the electrical activity. And so this electrical activity is the bursts. I know you know all this, but I'm giving this in great detail for your audience.
Thank you.
And so the EEG is these bursts of activity. It's neurons performing in groups. So when neurons all fire together, then you end up with this pattern that can be picked up from the surface. Now, this is big, broad, general stuff, but it has a lot to do with whether you're focusing and attending and concentrating. And lo and behold, Barry Sturman saw these in the cats. And so what did he do? He did what's called operant conditioning. He gave them some food. And when the cats made this little burst of brain activity, this EEG activity, he gave them a little bit of food. And so what happened? The cats made more of those bursts.
Wow.
And as he gave them more food, they made more of those bursts. And that was cool, and he published on that, and that's all in the history. But it wasn't really a meaningful discovery. The meaningful discovery happened when these same cats, a very short time later, now this is the 70s, astronauts are flying in space, and we've just flown to the moon, and astronauts are seeing funny things out the window, things, Houston is like, no, you don't actually see that out the window. We need to get your brain checked. And so they're kind of like, what's wrong with these astronauts? And so the theory was it was the rocket fuel. So these kitty cats at UCLA are getting tested and exposed to poisonous chemicals, the same chemicals that the astronauts might be exposed to. And what's amazing is some cats at UCLA got exposed to rocket fuel. And when they did, some of those cats ended up in terrible, ultimately fatal seizures, and some did not. Some cats, and I'm sorry to talk about dying kitty cats,
yes.
but some cats did not go into seizure. And they said, wait, why do we have cats that did not go into seizure? And it was exactly the cats that had been in the research where they trained their brains.
Wow. So their brains were preconditioned.
Yes. So Barry Sturman had done this exercise. It was just exercise for them to learn to make this burst of activity. The brain needs to coordinate its activity. And what is a seizure? A seizure is uncoordinated activity. It's the brain flailing, for lack of a better explanation. It's neurons locking into other neurons that aren't supposed to be locked to each other. They're synchronously firing when that's not a good thing, and it's ugly synchrony, and you get into a seizure. And by sort of lifting these little kitty weights in their brain, if you follow my analogy, they're sort of exercising the timing and coordination of their neuronal circuitry. And that brain timing just gets exercised, and that exercise, that little bit of exercise of just learning to make these bursts for food, was enough exercise that these cats were seizure resistant. And that's the same work that ultimately immediately got done with humans. Barry Sturman had a very seizure-prone lab assistant, and she's like, hey, I've been tracking my seizures all my life because I'm a researcher, and so here's my history of my seizures. Try this neurofeedback stuff on me. And they did, and her seizures massively resolved, and that's published. And then flash forward a few years, and you get to my parents and my brother trying this for his seizures, and it was very successful for him. Ultimately a complicated story, but it was enough to change my parents' focus and pull them out of their careers and put them into doing neurofeedback and teaching everyone how to do this. They're really the largest training operation in the field, teaching professionals how to do this and just getting this out there.
Incredible.
And just
incredible. I can only imagine that they probably gave the next wave of astronauts neurofeedback, And I'm wondering if they believe now that they actually were seeing UFOs, right?
I'm sure there's plenty of people who would like to, maybe it wasn't the chemicals in the air.
Exactly.
Maybe it was something out the window. Yeah, there's a lot of undiscovered terrain out there in the universe. However, there is even more undiscovered terrain in our own brain.
In the brain.
And so neuroscience right now is often drawing that comparison. We are more confused about the mysteries in the brain than we are of the mysteries in the universe. Now, that may just because our telescopes aren't high enough resolution yet. Maybe someday we're going to discover an alien world and be like, oh, gosh, you know, this has been here all the time, and
we're
we
not
never saw
alone.
you.
Yeah.
Right. And won't that be interesting if that day arrives?
Yes.
But right now, the deepest mysteries are in the inner space, not the outer space. We are the biggest mysteries are in the brain, and so I always chuckle when I see these kinds of grand conclusions thrown on Facebook, where somebody's like, "There's a thing called dopamine or serotonin," and we've heard those words before, and we use them. And so you hear about these neurotransmitters, and people go, "Oh my gosh, this means everything. I have this neurotransmitter, and therefore I am this kind of person," and it's actually not so conclusive or diagnostic usually. And in fact, we all have lots of neurotransmitters, and they're doing lots of different things, and our brains use them in different ways in different people, and it's very individualized. But what's exciting about right now is that we are scraping the surface of that science of starting to understand the neurotransmitters. I mean, this is neurotransmitters and
Kurt, I hate to interrupt you, but it seems like we're coming up on the end of our first segment, and we're going to have to take a break for our sponsors. But please hold that thought so that we can get right back into this after this commercial. Happening right now is the BiomedRx Health Center is our weekly holistic health fair called Holistic Health Sundays at the BiomedRx Health Center. We'll discuss more of this after these messages. The BiomedRx Health Center provides high-tech, holistic, and alternative healthcare services, such as Neurofeedback or EEG Biofeedback. Neurofeedback is an electronic method of restoring the brain to its natural balance. It could be an effective support therapy for stress, anxiety, depression, PTSD, and addictions, as well as learning and behavioral disorders. You want to check us out at biomedrxhealthcenter.com. That's biomedrxhealthcenter.com.
AM 590, The Answer.
We're back with more high-tech holistic healthcare solutions from the BiomedRx Health Center. This is BiomedRx Radio. I'm your host, Devin Lockett, and my co-host, my daughter, Katie.
Hey there.
And we're talking to Mr. Kurt Othmer of the EEG Institute in Woodland Hills, California. And Kurt, I'm sorry to have interrupted you before the break, but please continue.
Great. Thanks, Devin. And I was talking about our current discoveries in neurotransmitters and in brain science. And I was talking about our friend, the late Candace Pert, who she is the one in the 70s who discovered how morphine actually binds in the synapse. This is that recent that, this is just that many years ago to know how that neurotransmitter, certainly morphine, existed for a long time before we knew how it worked. And so much of neuroscience and health has existed before we understood why it works. Yes. And it was just, hey, there's this thing that helps people and or hurts people in many cases, and makes people feel and so forth. And that was discovered quite recently of the mechanism of how does that actually work. And so much of this right now is being discovered. How do these mechanisms actually work? How do we understand? And so what I was joking about is the kind of social media view of these things, of we find out how one neurotransmitter works, and it's all of a sudden we draw grand conclusions that means that's everything about neuroscience. And we're these very, very, very complicated organisms. Our brain is the greatest frontier. I feel like we're at this moment in history right now where we are just beginning to crack open the box. Maybe if I'm talking about the brain, the word cracked is not exactly the right word. but we're shining a light on the science and on the mechanisms of how these things really work. And as we shine this light and start to see, oh my gosh, this is how the brain works when you're thinking about something. This is how the brain works when you are thinking, or when you're scared, or when you're depressed. These are the neurotransmitters. These are the EEG patterns. These are the blood flow patterns. We're getting to see these things, and we're getting to start to understand when they fail, how they fail, and maybe even how to correct them. But a lot of where we are in the field, is in the world of medicine and the world of brain health, is we're using the things that work. And so what was so interesting is that Barry Sturman's work was accidental. I mean, he was doing this real test of, hey, can we make more of this burst? And so in the last segment, I was talking about this brain burst of activity, this EEG burst of activity that he rewarded with food. And those cats went on to be seizure resistant when exposed to poisonous chemicals. And so those cats, that was completely an accidental discovery. They didn't purposefully test if they would have seizures when exposed to chemicals. That was actually a huge problem. These cats got exposed to these poisonous chemicals, and some of them were seizure resistant, some of them weren't, and they had to go back and go, who are these cats that are messing up our statistics, and these guys aren't having seizures and those ones are? Why? Oh, it's this neurofeedback stuff. Oh, wait, maybe this neurofeedback stuff is helpful.
And that's good information.
And so we're in these...
Well, it's good that it worked on cats, because, you know, a lot of people think that, oh, well, maybe the effects of neurofeedback is a placebo, and a cat can't have a placebo. You can't really explain to a cat what something is supposed to do for them.
Yeah. You know, the placebo thing is something we get asked a lot.
Yes.
And I think it's because people haven't heard of this. And it's just, so it's something we get confronted with a lot, is this placebo question. But animal research proves it out that this isn't placebo. But, you know, the biggest compelling thing for me is just the differential results that we see. So in other words, we hook somebody up and we move our protocol around. We change how we're training, where the sensors are placed on the scalp, what training protocol we're using. We change that a little bit, and we have markedly different effects. Can I tell a funny story? Yes. So my girlfriend and I, we hook each other up with neurofeedback in the evenings, and so it's I have to admit I don't usually hook up clients. I'm more on the business side, and I talk to smart people, but I'm not one. Anyway. And so I don't hook up clients, but I do hook up my girlfriend. She hooks me up, but it was great. And I got to admit, I made a mistake. And so it was so funny because I hooked her up, and we're usually perfect at getting rid of a headache. So she had a headache, and she's like, can you hook me up? I've got a headache. And so bring her over, hook her up. And usually the headache, we can get rid of a headache in a couple minutes with her. And she responds really fast, and that's not uncommon. And so I hook her up, and we're a couple minutes in, and I'm like, how's the headache? And, you know, she's trying to be really polite. She's trying to be really nice to me. So she's like, maybe it's a little better, I suppose. It kind of moved a little bit into the front, but it's kind of, so I'm like, okay, we'll do some more. We get out to 10 minutes, and usually I change the placements at 10 minutes. Okay. And I get kind of like, how's the headache? And again, she's trying to be nice, so she's like, maybe I admit. I'm like, but is it gone? And she's like, no, it's still there. I'm like, okay, let's do another 10 minutes. Let's stay at this placement for another 10 minutes. So we go another 10 minutes, and I get to the end of that, and I'm kind of like, how's the headache? And, I don't miss, kind of not really. And so I'm like, look, let's just move on, do the next placement. Maybe it'll get better later. Maybe you need some water or something like that. So I move on to the next placement, and I reach down to move the sensor, and I'm like, oh my God, I put the sensors in the wrong places. I totally this is a meaningless session. We haven't been doing anything. Oh, wow. And so I moved the sensors, and I moved the sensors to where they're supposed to be. Okay. And 2 minutes later, headache's gone.
Excellent.
And so
no, placement is
important. She and I look at she and I look at each other. We're like, well, if we had some doubt that what we're doing is actually real. And, what's interesting about it is it's a little micro double-blind placebo-controlled trial, right? And when they say double-blind, it means that the therapist doesn't know that they're not doing something real. The client doesn't know that they're not doing something real. Both the therapist and client are blind to whether it is real or not. And those double-blind studies, they prove out, and we have that in neurofeedback. But I love these little microcosms of double-blind studies, because I really thought I was doing real neurofeedback on her, and she really thought she was getting real neurofeedback. If this is placebo, it would have been as effective to do the imaginary as to get the sensors in the right place.
She would have thought so. Exactly.
2 minutes in.
Exactly.
Of putting the sensors in the right place. It was, but just to defend the the actual therapists out there, I don't do this for a living. I don't hook people up for a living. I'm mostly on the business side. So
incredible.
The actual therapists have more training to work their bugs out in the classroom before they go into the clinical practice.
Absolutely. In my case, I have a son who was on the autism spectrum, and his mother and I went through a lot of different therapies, the typical, chelation and behavioral therapy, speech therapy, a number of therapies. And we found that neurofeedback was really the most effective therapy in changing his condition. After his first neurofeedback session, at the moment the clinician took the probes off of his head, it was the first time that he had actually made eye contact and maintained eye contact since he was diagnosed. And that's when I realized, well, with my background in biomedical engineering, I had been calibrating EEG equipment for about 20 years beforehand, that EEG neurofeedback was the way to go. And I haven't looked back, and I was able to actually, with the BiomedRx Health Center, I was able to help a lot of other kids, a lot of parents, a lot of kids a lot of people with kids on the autism spectrum, a lot of veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder, a lot of people who are suffering from depression, anxiety, and stress. It's been a good journey. It's been a very, very good journey.
It's a beautiful thing that you what you can do with neurofeedback. I was also on your EEG info website.
Yes, let's get that out right now. For those of you
EEGinfo.com.
Yes, for those of you who would like to find out more about the EEG Institute, please visit www.eeginfo.com. And there's a lot of information about neurofeedback, about the Othmer method, and for those of you who are interested in perhaps taking the training and becoming a neurofeedback practitioner, I highly recommend contacting Kurt at the EEG Institute.
The training courses are for professionals only, so you do need to be a licensed healthcare professional to take the class. But there's also a provider listing of providers around the globe, you included, all over the world, who offer neurofeedback to do this personally. But if you are a licensed healthcare professional, you can take the course. And I also, if we're doing plugs, let me plug my brother's book, which is brianslegacy.org. Go to brianslegacy.org. There's an audio book and a print book and a Kindle book, and it's really dear to my heart. It's based on his journal, and it's based on my dad's writings around that. Talks a little bit about, it's very personal. It's sort of like the book Why I Jump. It's very much the perspective from a young man's view of struggling with how do you try to make friends and get to college when you are dealing with Asperger's and social problems and seizures and a really, really squirrely brain. And so you get to sort of hear. I have one really good friend who has a severely autistic child and never tried neurofeedback for her, unfortunately. But she did read this book, and she was like, gosh, I don't want to read about another family having the same problems I'm having. But it's not that. It's really his perspective of this is how I feel, and it was actually really cathartic for her to read, to sort of hear from the child's perspective of these are the struggles and successes that I'm going through. And then, of course, his journey with neurofeedback, which isn't that prominent in the book, but it is about that as well.
Great. For those of you just joining us, this is BiomedRx Radio, a weekly holistic health program that airs every Sunday at noon here on AM 590 and www.am590theanswer.com. Come out to the BiomedRx Health Center for Holistic Health Sundays. The BiomedRx Health Center is located at 916 North Mountain Avenue, Suite D1, Upland, California, 91786. This is on the southeast corner of Foothill Boulevard and Mountain Avenue in the city of Upland, or you can call us at 909-608-2880. That's 909-608-2880. We'll be back with more of Mr. Kurt Othmer and the EEG Institute after these messages. The BiomedRx Health Center provides high-tech, holistic, and alternative healthcare services, such as biomagnetic pair therapy. Biomagnetic pair therapy uses pairs of permanent magnets to correct pH imbalances in the body caused by viruses, bacteria, fungus, parasites, toxins, and other pathogens. Please contact us at the BiomedRx Health Center at 909-608-2880. That's 909-608-2880.
AM 590, The Answer.
We're back with more high-tech holistic healthcare solutions with BiomedRx Radio. I am your host, Devin Lockett, and my co-host, my daughter, Katie.
Hi.
And we have a special guest, Mr. Kurt Othmer of the EEG Institute, and we're talking about the benefits of neurofeedback, or EEG biofeedback. This is one of the therapies that we offer at the BiomedRx Health Center. And I'd like to get a little bit more into, since we're in the second half, the Othmer method specifically and infra-low neurofeedback. Can you give us an explanation, Kurt, about what infra-low is about? Yes.
Well, we've been in this field for over 30 years, and it began with a certain more simplistic approach where, this was what came out of the research at the time. We were talking earlier about Dr. Barry Sturman and the research there, and that kind of led to those early protocols that we used. But through work with our clients over the years and listening to their feedback and what was helping them, we moved year after year towards these lower and more effective protocols. And so things have gotten stronger and stronger year after year. And most especially these, what are termed high arousal conditions, these sort of high energy, high anxiety conditions, especially the trauma conditions, PTSD, the autism, Asperger's, which is also kind of super hyper-focused. It's sort of the place all of our brains are supposed to go. If your house is on fire, you're supposed to just super focus. If you've ever had that experience of kind of running out of that, running out of some dangerous situation, and then you look down and you're like, oh my goodness, I've injured my arm, but I didn't even see that I did that.
Pure fight or flight mode. Pure fight or flight mode.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that's a healthy place to be when your brain needs to escape and keep you alive to make it out of the house. You can't really be worried about your broken arm right then or an injury. Whereas the autistic child is sort of always in that state. And so they, too, can break their arm and not notice, and they ended up with a really high threshold to pain is one of the things that can go along with autism. And so they can be, have a terrible wound and not care or notice. And that was the case with my brother all the time. He would just be, his leg was dripping with blood, and everybody's like, oh, my gosh, what did you do? And he's like, oh, I didn't even notice. Did I hurt myself? And so think of that as the brain way, way, way overexcited, way over, juiced, essentially. Yes. And so trauma takes us there. Chronic pain takes us there. Yes. All of these things are these really, really hyper over-aroused conditions.
Intense emotions and boredom.
Yeah. And depression and boredom can also fit in there, which is really weird. That's a counterintuitive one. You think of depression as like, oh, he's too lazy, like we need to juice him up. But actually, depression is the opposite. Depression is it's like being stuck with your engine going 1,000,000 miles an hour, but you can't put the stick shift in first gear. And because your engine is spinning way up here, just too fast, that you can't just sort of slow down and glide the gear shift into first gear and just get off the couch and move.
Exactly.
And so we actually think of depression and what you call boredom, which is often just ADD. But we think of those more in the high arousal. If the engine is spinning too fast, not too slow in many cases. And in these sorts of high arousal conditions where the engine is sort of spinning too fast, if we go with that analogy, the kind of neurofeedback that we do today, this infra-low, is much, much more calming than anything we did in the past, and pretty much anything else that we've been exposed to across our field. This is more calming, more relaxing. It brings the nervous system down to these calmer states. And that is, just before the break, you were talking a bit about autism and the effect of this on autism, and that, of course, my brother's situation. And it's so, I love the words that I've had from several parents who happen to also be MDs of autistic children. So we've had several folks who meet that description here in the clinic. And they have described neurofeedback as the core of all of the other therapies they're doing. It's like we're just calming that nervous system down in this significant way that allows all those other therapies, the speech therapy, the play therapy, the ABA, everything else they're doing, all suddenly goes better when they've calmed that nervous system down in this really, really core central way. And what's beautiful about the way we're calming it down is it's not ABA. We're not, twisting your arm to do it. All we're doing is showing you your own brain rhythms, and just by reflecting them back and reflecting these particularly low calming ones, we show these low frequencies back to you, your own ones that you're already making. All we're doing is holding a mirror back to you, showing back to you the way your brain is working, and your brain does something amazing with that, more than we really understand. And, I mean, we can look at the research of exactly what we do understand of it, but ultimately there's a lot more here. The brain is just seeing itself in action and doing a lot with that information to calm and regulate the nervous system, which is leading to a lot of effects. So to circle back, basically when we're looking at all of these really high arousal conditions, we're doing more today than we ever could even just a couple of years ago, let alone 20, 30 years ago. And so there's a lot of different kinds of neurofeedback out there. People are doing a lot of different things, and a lot of it is really good. This is an exciting time, and there's lots of different brain interventions, and a lot of them are good. Some of them are very silly and not, so buyer beware. But there's a lot of really, really interesting and good work happening. But when it comes to those particular high arousal conditions, this infralow work appears to be the most significant and most beneficial.
It really does. One thing I noticed is, infralow is very effective for all of the aforementioned conditions. We also have alpha theta, right? And can you give us a little bit of explanation about the difference between infralow and alpha theta neurofeedback?
Yeah, it's we're looking at it, the exact other side of the coin. So the way we're looking at the brain activity when we do the infralow training and this sort of what we term the awake state training, what we're particularly looking at in that space is, think of it like exercise for the brain. It is like going to the gym and lifting a weight, whereas alpha theta and synchrony are the opposite. They're like meditation. They're like the spa. It's like it's the hot tub. It's the massage room. It's the opposite. It's the meditation. Yes. And so the awake state builds stability, strengthens the brain. We're strengthening the brain towards calmness. We're helping the brain to be stable and calm, and I mean stable in terms of strength, like not falling into a seizure or a migraine. And I mean calm in terms of helping regulate emotions with the autistic kids and trauma and PTSD and chronic pain and so forth, where we're helping the nervous system calm and regulate itself. Yeah. The other side of the coin. Yeah, go ahead, Kate.
Yeah. I just wanted to add something. It's funny how you were comparing ADD and depression together, because that's what I'm treating myself with neurofeedback for. And before neurofeedback, I've only been doing like a few sessions, so it's not all the way gone, but before neurofeedback, I was a heavy meditator. And I noticed that using neurofeedback, it puts me in it is in the meditation feeling, but much deeper and much better. And then I wake up much more refreshed, and it helps me kick myself out of bed in the morning much better than usual. And I'm like reading much better and everything like that. So yeah, when those two things come hand in hand, then yeah, I get that.
And it's such a foreign idea to most that ADD and depression can go along together.
Yeah.
People really don't. It's like, you're ADD. You're supposed to just be, a bullet through space, ADHD, and you're supposed to always have energy and be the life of the party. And so what's really interesting is that ADD and depression can absolutely go side by side, and it's hard for people to notice, because you are the life of the party, but you can be miserable at the same time, and so it's hard to diagnose, it's hard to detect, and it's hard for people to also know to ask a doctor, especially when that condition is severe, and we know, depression can be a very, very serious thing. And so people often don't know to ask because everybody else is like, wow, let's have Joe along because he's so funny and he's the life of the party. He's the Jim Carrey of the party.
Exactly.
And, silly and makes noises and everything. And so, nobody thinks to ask, like, are you depressed?
Right.
And so we don't know that those, most of society doesn't know that those two things can go together.
One thing
beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, one thing that I've noticed with theta in training the brain in the alpha zone of awake, relaxed like we are right now, basically, and the theta zone, which is just on the other side of sleep, the light sleep or the REM sleep, REM, rapid eye movement sleep, or the dream state, that it's really helpful for getting in touch with repressed emotions or just purging that bad energy, or and for a lot of people that are creative, I've gotten a lot of good feedback from them having an increased ability to access their creative zone or to be more spontaneous as musicians or artists or even as actors.
Yeah, there's a wonderful study out of King's College London where they did a study on musical performance with alpha theta, and they, blind observers behind a screen, marked them 2 years improved after they did the alpha theta. Wow. So it's that sort of more meditative, getting in touch with your self, your deeper self, that calm meditative space, which can be really important for a lot of reasons, even without trauma, of just being meditative and getting into that space. And then if trauma is the issue, which, again, to touch back on the ADD topic, the ADD is sort of a trauma in and of itself. You're getting told no at every turn, and people are picking on you and bumping you around in ways that other people don't confront. I mean, other people have their traumas too, but ADD itself can be a real trauma. And by rolling from neurofeedback into the alpha theta, we can help to process that. It takes you to that safe space. Other people use tools like EMDR, eye movement, the eye movement therapy and stuff to get to these deep spaces. Alpha theta does it in a very, very safe, holistic, internal way.
Yes.
What I love about neurofeedback...
We're coming up on another break, and we will be back after these messages with more information about alpha theta neurofeedback and Kurt Othmer at the EEG Institute. BiomedRx Optimum Woman is the only woman's high-potency, full-spectrum, multiple vitamin supplement to contain 56 nutrients, including those most important for today's woman, such as calcium for bone health, iron for healthy red blood cells, beta-carotene, biotin for nail and hair health, gamma-linoleic acid from evening primrose oil, octosanol, grapeseed extract, a potent antioxidant, important for maintaining capillary strength, and vegetarian digestive enzymes. The BiomedRx line of vitamins, detoxifying products, and other supplements are made of only the highest quality, all-natural ingredients. We have supplements to fit every age, gender, and lifestyle, from children to adults to seniors to professional athletes. BiomedRx Supplements has what you need. Visit us online at www.biomedrxsupplements.com.
AM 590, The Answer.
We're back with more high-tech holistic healthcare solutions at BiomedRx Radio. I am Devin Lockett, your host, and my co-host, Katie, my daughter.
Hey.
And we're speaking with Mr. Kurt Othmer of the EEG Institute in Woodland Hills. At the moment, we were talking about alpha theta neurofeedback and how powerful and effective it is for a lot of things. Kurt, can you give us more information?
Yeah, absolutely. And where we were going with this, right? So alpha theta, looking at these deep states and helping the brain deal with trauma and so forth. But what I love about this is that we do so in a way that's we're just showing you your own brain activity. And what this means is that we're not shoving you into something that you're not comfortable with yet. And so some of this work with trauma and so forth can push people too fast. It can push them before they're ready. And so the alpha theta, if somebody goes to alpha theta too soon, it's at worst boring. They're like, okay, I'm not getting anywhere yet. And so we take them back to the awake state. But what's beautiful about it is it's you. It's a guide to you. It's letting your brain see itself in action. action and learn from its own activity, and to be calming and regulating and get all those benefits. And what that means is, we talk a lot in terms of the disorders, but we also work with a lot of peak performers. And that pro athletes, we're right here in Hollywood over here, and so we're working with professional musicians. There are a lot of Olympic athletes who've done this, professional soccer teams.
That's right.
And around the globe doing this. There are a lot of people who do this, improve their golf game, improve their baseball game. So there's a lot of the very, very top performers who know that at that level, it's not about just being physically stronger. Right?
Yes.
It's about not making that one mistake, and it's not missing that free throw. Were you not strong enough to make the free throw? Were you not able to run up and down the court? No, it's not about strength or strategy. It's about having your mind calm enough and there enough and not distracted enough. The sort of traumas that lurk in the background. My dad never loved me, and you break the free throw. It's like, okay, how do you process that trauma, move it to a safe long-term storage so that it doesn't have to eat at you now, so that you're like, everybody misses a golf shot.
Yes.
Right? Everybody misses a shot. Everybody misses a free throw. The best players still miss. The difference between the best player and, me is they make the next one. I keep missing, right?
Yes.
So these pro athletes, it's not about being strong enough. It's not that they haven't practiced enough. It starts at that top edge. It starts to be mental. And we see that mental game because it is about making that next shot and not having that situation where you miss one and then the next one, and now you're in your head and, oh my gosh, and now I missed 2 in a row, now I'm going to miss 3 in a row, and now you're just ruined for the rest of the game, and you never ever recover. And we see people do that in sports psychologically, where they just never come back. And so in this field, everything from professional sports, professional music, professional opera singers, all kinds of folks who have done this and won.
We have a number of peak performance clients at the BiomedRx Health Center. A number of golfers that give me testimonials about how they've improved their golf game, the focus and concentration. And it's really good that you brought up the example of the free throw, because that is something that comes up with basketball players. The ability to shut out internal and external noise, the improved and enhanced focus and concentration that you get as a result of neurofeedback training.
Yeah, and it's also about what noise do you hear when you shut out all the external noise? What noise is going on inside?
The self-doubt and questioning.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What doubts and questioning are eating away? And by being able to do this really holistic process, right? It is just you seeing your own brain activity. And it sounds so simple. It sounds so easy, like, oh, you're just showing a mirror, blah, blah, blah. Why is that valuable? It's because that's everything that our brains do for us. That is how the brain works. From the moment you're born, you are processing the world out there, not with a mind to observe it, but with a mind to interact with it. Our goal from the word go is to interact with the world. Can I touch it? Can I put it in my mouth, right? The infant wants to put everything in their mouth because they just feel it, good sensors in there.
Exactly.
And so everything goes in the mouth, and they're touching things and grabbing things and looking at things and interacting. Everything is about, can I affect it? Not just is it there. We're not just born to watch television. We're born to interact and to touch and to feel and to see what can I influence. And I'll tell you a funny story. We actually are so wired that way to check for our influence that this feature in our brains, we overdo it. Mm-hmm. And that leads to the kinds of thinking, it's like the stock market crashes and we go, oh my gosh, I know it's because I didn't wear my lucky socks, right? Or our favorite sports team doesn't win, and it's like, oh my gosh, I totally should have knocked on wood yesterday. It's my fault that my favorite sports team didn't win. And on the, cognitively, we all know that's silly, but we've all thought it.
Yes. No, it goes there. Your mind goes there.
Our brain goes there. We're like, wait, did I cause that? And that feeling of wondering, did I cause that? Is that what did I have influence over that? it shows that core functionality of our brain to wonder, what do I have? How far does my influence reach? Did I cause that? And we're so questioning that from the day we're born. We're questioning, what am I causing? What am I causing? What am I interacting with? We're so interested in our causation that we overinterpret it. We overdo it. So now we give you your own brain information, and we're immediately interested in it. It is our feedback about our own brain's performance, and our brain does so much with that in terms of regulation and calming and stabilization. It frankly surprises me every day, and it's much more than we're expecting every single day. It's the beginning of something really, really big. I think we're on the very early days of something that is really, really big.
Now, what about synchrony? Can you give us an explanation about the difference between synchrony neurofeedback and alpha, theta, and infralow?
Absolutely. So, yeah, we've been talking a little bit about alpha, theta, and synchrony over on this other side. So infralow is one way of looking at the brain, and it's sort of how the math is working, how we're showing you those brain activity, which is more work. It's more, it doesn't feel like work, but it's more, we're challenging the circuitry to accomplish something. Whereas synchrony and alpha, theta are more like allowing the brain to relax. It's more the space your brain goes to when you're kind of drifting away. You're supposed to be listening to a lecture, but your brain is drifting away and thinking about Hawaii. And that's more that alpha space and that synchrony space. The alpha theta work we do more for trauma because it's more about helping the brain to be in that space where the brain deals with trauma. Whereas synchrony is more about meditation. It's more about taking the brain to the space of just being without thinking. It's just that sort of clear your mind kind of space. But that's hard for people. To just clear your mind. You're like, yeah, look at me, I'm meditating. I'm so awesome. Look at me meditate. And it's like, no. You're not supposed to just think about how great you're meditating. That's not meditating.
Yes, exactly. It's hard to get to the no mind, as the Zen masters say. It's hard to get to the no mind zone, and it's more challenging than it seems, than it appears.
And that's where the neurofeedback comes in, because we're playing a bell and music and sounds and white noise and all this 7 layers of information that are all coming into your ears and giving you information about what your brain is doing that's guiding you. So instead of just sitting there on a pillow and going, hey, meditate like that guy is, why are you so bad at it? It's like, this is guiding you, and you're just letting go and letting your brain follow those sounds. And to the extent your brain is ready, you will just guide into your meditation. So it's like meditation with handrails. We're guiding you there instead of just making you sit on a pillow and figuring it out on your own.
Yes.
And so it's guided. We actually had this really cool experience where my parents got to go to India and work with a long-term meditator and in Dharamsala, and they got to meet the Dalai Lama, and it was wonderful. We got to teach a bunch of the Dalai Lama's doctors there at a local hospital and teach them how to do neurofeedback. And we worked with this long-term meditator, and he did just 10 minutes, just a short session of synchrony. And he did the 10 hertz and the 40 hertz, just different frequencies that we can train. And the first one he did on the first day, he described it as sort of 40% of what he gets out of his deep meditations.
Yes.
He came back and did the 40 hertz the next day, and just 10 minutes of it. And he described that as 80% of what he gets in his deepest meditation.
After years of meditation. And I think that's incredible. Now, if you look up on YouTube, the video for that event is the first thing that comes up if you search for synchrony neurofeedback. Now, for those of you who are just joining us, this is BiomedRx Radio with Devin Lockett and Katie, my daughter. And I would like you guys to know that right now at the BiomedRx Health Center, we're having a health fair. The BiomedRx Health Center is located at the southeast corner of Foothill Boulevard and Mountain Avenue in the city of Upland. The address is 916 North Mountain Avenue, Suite D1, Upland, California, 91786. If you have any trouble finding us, you can give us a call at area code 909-608-2880. The BiomedRx has its own line of dietary supplements. The BiomedRx line of vitamins, detoxifying products, and other supplements are made of only the highest quality, all natural ingredients. We have supplements to fit every age, gender, and lifestyle, from children to adults to seniors to professional athletes. BiomedRx Supplements has what you need. Find us online at www.biomedrxsupplements.com. That is www.biomedrxsupplements.com. I would like to extend a special thank you to Mr. Kurt Othmer for appearing on our show and giving us this wonderful information about the EEG Institute. You can find them online at www.eeginfo.com. And if you would like to experience, if you're within the range of this radio broadcast, if you'd like to experience neurofeedback, you're welcome to come to the BiomedRx Health Center, once again at 916 North Mountain Avenue, Suite D1, Upland, California, 91786. We'll be back next week with more high-tech holistic healthcare solutions with BiomedRx Radio.
Your brain determines every aspect of your personality and consciousness, who you are, and how you navigate through life. It determines all of your behaviors, be they emotional, mental, physical, intellectual, or spiritual. Throughout life, we all accumulate dysregulation in the brain through ongoing stress, traumatic events, boredom, and intense emotion. This is a natural consequence of life. When too much dysregulation is accumulated due to traumatic experiences, it is called post-traumatic stress disorder. However, traumatic experience is only one of the ways that we accumulate dysregulation. Stress, genetics, poor nutrition, illness, injury, and toxic substances also contribute greatly to the accumulation of dysregulation. The effects, short of PTSD, can be anxiety, depression, addiction, sleeping and eating disorders, or any combination thereof. Neurofeedback, or EEG biofeedback, is the electronic restoration of the brain's natural balance. Many people get gym memberships to improve their healthy bodies. We provide what you might call a gym for the brain. For more than 30 years, this non-invasive technology has provided dramatic results for a multitude of symptoms. Peak performers have benefited from greater mental clarity, the control and elimination of stress, better sleep, consciousness expansion, and an overall higher quality of life. In our therapeutic practice, we treat many clients with autism and autistic spectrum disorder, ADD and ADHD, chronic stress, anxiety and depression, insomnia and other sleeping disorders, PTSD, and migraines. We also help clients to lose weight, stop smoking, or end addiction to drugs and/or alcohol. Neurofeedback is also indicated in the recovery from traumatic brain injury or stroke. However, in addition to the therapeutic applications of neurofeedback, we have just as many clients that come to us for what we call elective treatment or peak performance training. Peak performance neurofeedback training helps the brain to maintain a state of calm, focused clarity under the most stressful conditions. This is especially empowering for professional athletes, high-powered executives, entrepreneurs, entertainment professionals, and creatives, or anyone who wants a competitive edge in their chosen profession. So if you want to enjoy more focus, better concentration, better sleep, and an overall higher quality of life, contact us today to see if neurofeedback might be right for you.